Yo, he goes slow. He ain't no fool with that sonic speed. He just always cool.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
No fool. Come on, just show me what you got. Going fast is cool. Going slow is not.
Back in the early 90s, platform games were all the rage, and the fourth generation of video games consoles was dominated by the genre. Characters such as Sonic and Mario became huge cultural icons. If you were gaming back then, you probably played a whole bunch of platformers. But as the 90s progressed, the inclusion of a third spatial dimension became increasingly more vital to capture the attention of gamers and achieve commercial success. The platform genre had to take the leap into the realm of the Z-axis to avoid being left in the polygonal dust of the game industry as it hurtled towards the 21st century. Sega's first attempt at making a platformer in 3D was this, Bug for the Sega Saturn. Bug is a platform game released in 1995 in which you play a bug, very creatively named Bug. He's not just any bug though, he's a movie star. For this game, Bug is making the next big entomological blockbuster in which he has to save his friends from the clutches of the evil Queen Cadavra. This character looks kind of typical for the animals with attitude craze of the 90s, with his white gloves and smug face. Like some other characters of this era, such as Bubsy and Gex, Bug likes to crack wise and he doesn't usually stay quiet too long. Oh, he hates getting hurt. Looks like we can add not a masochist to the list of things we know about Bug then. And now I just don't know what to believe. Even though you can move in all four cardinal directions, it doesn't quite feel like a properly 3D game. You can't go in diagonals, and most of the time you're limited to just going in two directions. There aren't many parts of the game that allow you to go in all four directions. These restrictions make it feel not quite like a 3D game, but it still feels more 3D than a 2.5D game. So is this like a 2 3/4 D game? One of the most frustrating aspects is how the borders on these paths also act as walls, and for some reason, you can't walk or jump over them, despite them being flat on the ground. This can get very irritating where there's one of these borders getting between you and where you want to go. It looks like you should just be able to walk or jump over it, but instead, you just hit an invisible wall. So you have to walk around until you can eventually find the route that can take you to a place only a couple of feet in front of where you started. The game takes place over 6 levels. The themes for each of these levels are the sort of things that you would expect from a platformer. The first level, Insectia, is your typical green hill sort of thing. Then you have a desert level, a swamp level, an underwater level, a snowy level, and finally a lava-filled volcanic hellscape. Each level consists of 3 normal stages, or scenes as they are called here, and a boss stage. As you venture through these stages, you will encounter a menagerie of enemies including other insects, sea creatures and murderous reptiles. You do have a few ways to defeat these enemies at your disposal. Firstly, you have your bum. You can also pick up these gooey blob things. These give you a spit attack for the rest of the level. There are 4 different versions of this power up. You have the normal green one, the red one which gives a double shot, the purple one which adds a bouncing property to the projectile, and the blue one gives you a semi-automatic salivary gland. There is also a zap power up so you can use force lightning on your enemies. The problem is, this power up becomes useless once you get to the 3rd level, because at the 3rd level, the spit power ups are usually present near the start of the levels and are just better than the Zap power-up in every way. The Zap power-up is limited use and has such a laughably short range that it is incredibly difficult to use it without taking damage yourself. There's an invincibility power-up. I quite like how it keeps to the movie theme as Bug is switched out for a stunt bug.
Bug juice!
Your life meter is shown down here as a can of bug juice, which turns into a discarded condom when you die for some reason. Which really makes me question what exactly is in this bug juice. You've nearly done it now, you've been in there for ages.
Just a minute. Bug juice!
You'll also see these blue crystals all over the place. These don't really do much, but if you collect 100 on all 3 stages of a level, then you'll get to play a bonus round where you fly in a dragonfly. These look pretty cool, but you only get one shot at them. Those dragonfly levels aren't the only bonus stages in the game. If you pick up a coin, you can take it to one of these pimp spiders, and you'll get taken to a special stage where you can earn extra lives by collecting awards.
Good luck, man.
There's a whole bunch of different special stages, so it really adds a nice bit of variety. Apparently there is a special stage where Sonic turns up at some point, although I wasn't able to find this in my playthrough. And to be honest, I didn't really want to play any more of this game when I was finished with it. And now back to the regular levels. Is the level design any good? Well, let's start with a couple of positives. There are plenty of branching paths in these levels, so if you're having trouble with a part of the level, then there very well may be another route to get to the goal that you might find a bit easier. There are also some levels that use levers and other mechanics to make things a little more interesting. And now I present you the negatives. Pretty much everything else. The one main being that the levels are way too long. They just keep going and going and going. And all through that you'll mostly just be walking and maybe doing some basic platforming. There really is not enough variety in these levels to justify their colossal length. The worst sin that any game can commit, in my opinion, is to be boring. A game should be fun, it should be exciting, it should make you want to carry on playing. But this game, it just has you praying for the end. When you do get to the end of the level, you feel a quick rush of relief before the crushing realisation that you have to do this 2 more times before you eventually reach the boss. Now, you might be thinking I'm exaggerating when I talk about the length of these levels, but let me tell you just how long these are. During one of my sessions of capturing footage for this game that lasted 4.5 hours, in that time I completed a whopping 2 levels. And that was with an infinite lives cheat. 2 levels. Yeah, that does consist of a total of 6 stages and 2 bosses, but still, only 2 levels in 4.5 hours. I can't tell you how mind-numbing that became and how just tedious this game is. Any semblance of fun it has just completely goes out the window. It just completely overstays its welcome. And it just drains the fun and you just are left there begging for the end. And yes, I used a cheat, because simply this game just doesn't deserve the amount of time that would be needed to get through it without one. 4.5 hours to do those levels with a cheat? Imagine how long it would have taken without it. In fact, I'd probably still be on those levels right now. Not only are these levels horrifically long, the checkpoints are few and far between. So when you die, you could be sent back miles to try again. But then if you lose all your lives and use a continue, then it's back to the start of the stage for you. That could be about 30 minutes of game time that you'll just have to repeat just to get back to where you were, and it just feels like a huge waste of your precious time. Continues in this game are very limited. You can get more if you find one of these clapperboards, but good luck with that. And if you lose all of your continues, which, trust me, you will, then Bug shakes his naked arse at you, taunting you as you are sent back to the title screen as you scream in despair.
Nice butt!
If this happens, or if you just don't want to play it all through in one go, there is a sort of save system, and it is one of the worst save systems I have ever experienced. Firstly, it only lets you start at the beginning of the first stage of a level, meaning that you may have to repeat hours of gameplay if you want to get back to the third stage. But the worst part of this is that you only get to continue each level a couple of times. And then it just runs out and you have to go back to the previous level. Imagine playing a game that would only let you load your save twice. But that's what Bug does. Whoever decided this was a good idea should be sent to The Hague to be tried for human rights violations. There is a cheat that lets you skip stages, and to be honest, it's the only acceptable way to continue your game. Bug himself really isn't built for this game either. With how long these stages are, we could really do with a character who can run really fast, like Sonic. But instead, Bug just slowly saunters through each stage with no sense of urgency whatsoever. Even these cutscenes between stages take so long, just because it takes Bug forever to walk from one set to the other. Bug's terrible jumping ability means that even basic platforming is way more frustrating than it should be. It seems that you have to get right to the very edge of a platform to make pretty much any jump. The required level of pixel perfect precision means that you'll miss a whole lot of jumps that look like they should be easy. And when you fall down a death pit, it takes forever for you to hit the bottom and die, because everything in this game just has to take way longer than it should. The camera is generally okay, but there is this one part that drove me absolutely crazy. In the third level, Splot, yes, that's really what it's called, there is this bit where you have to get from one point to another by bouncing on these flying enemies. The problem is that as you bounce, the camera pans upwards so you can't see where it is you need to land. And then after a few bounces, the enemies start moving left and right, but you can't see where they are because of the camera. This means that you just have to guess where they are, and that just doesn't work, and if you miss, you fall in the water and die. Which doesn't make any sense that the water kills you, because the next level is set entirely underwater and you're fine! And how about the boss fights? Well, they are actually not bad at all. In fact, the boss fights in this game saving grace. They add some much needed variety and provide a bit of a challenge that isn't infuriating. The first boss is quite basic. He's this big snail thing that can fly about and drop bombs. If you get too far away, then he pops out of his shell wearing a cowboy hat and wielding a couple of revolvers. I wasn't expecting that, and it did make me giggle a little. He takes a lot of hits, but he's not too bad for a first boss. Looks like this guy's got it right. The second boss is this huge stone monster. To defeat him, you have to use this cool catapult mechanic that sadly doesn't appear again anywhere else in the game. This is the easiest boss, as you can really just cheese him. All you have to do is go over to one side, wait until you can hit him, and then just fire a rock at his face. The third boss is this awesome looking sea snake worm monster thingy. This fight utilises the spit mechanic, and there are a few different phases to go through to stop this one from getting boring. This one is quite a challenge, but in a good way. The fourth boss is a giant octopus, which sort of reminds me of Nitrous Oxide from Crash Team Racing. In this fight you get a tennis racket, and you use it to hit these fish back at him. Again, another interesting mechanic that just never returns. Boss number 5 is this Yeti bug. There's this Donkey Kong bit where he throws rocks at you, and you just need to avoid them to get past before you get to fight him. I keep saying him, but this could well be a female Yeti bug. I mean, if the size of those chebs are anything to go by, then I'd say that's very well likely the case. The final boss is Queen Cadavra herself. Just dodge her minions and gunfire and hit her when you have the chance. If you manage to power through this game and reach the ending, then you get to see Bug going to the premiere of this movie. Reviews from back in the day seem to be really positive, and it managed to get some pretty impressive scores, like this absolutely ludicrous 94% for Mean Machine Sega magazine. If you ever like playing platformers, you must have this for your Saturn, an absolutely essential buy for those into gameplay. Remember kids, don't do crack. But after a little time, the novelty of its 3D-ness seemed to wear off. The June 1997 issue of Saturn Power magazine said, "Originally very appealing, we soon realised Bug to be an almost impossible game to complete. The levels are far too large with not enough restart points," but then still gave it 76% and listed it as the 46th best Saturn game. To summarise, this is not a good game. You can genuinely feel yourself aging as you play this. Every step Bug takes is a reminder of your own fragile mortality as it slowly slips away. Every single thread that makes up your existence is slowly being unwound as you inch closer to the grave, with this game being the catalyst that continues your downfall. And when I'm on my deathbed, I'll be reminded of all those things I could have done in my life. Maybe I could have learnt an extra language, maybe I could have learnt some kind of artistic skill. No, it'd be amazing to be able to draw or paint or do anything like that. Maybe I should have learnt a sport, maybe I should have gone out and been more sociable and meet more people. Instead, I spent my time playing this 4.5 valuable hours spent on just 2 levels. Yes, I'm still mad about that. This game is way too long and tedious to deserve the time it demands. Bug is simply not up to the task of being a platform hero, with his pathetic jump and lack of other abilities. Even though the boss fights do offer a glimmer of light, they simply are not enough to shine through all the terrible things that this game does. There is a sequel, but I've not played it, so I can't tell you if they fixed anything for that release, but the first one is definitely a game to avoid. So a huge thank you for watching, and please remember to share, like, subscribe, comment. You can follow me on social media, hit that bell wherever it is to make sure that you get notifications every time I upload a video. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. Maybe eventually I'll get an Instagram, but who knows. You can also support the channel on Patreon. I've got a number of different tiers, so you might find something that intrigues you, just as these wonderful people have, such as the mighty Carl Deakin and the wonderful Stuart Christopher Brownlee, and House of the Ted and Magnus Wurzane, who joined whilst I was editing this episode, who have supported me from the $5 and up tiers, so I'll read your name out at the end. And I also have a Ko-Fi page if you just want to throw a one-off tip my way. And until next time, bye!